Tristan, your thoughts?
Yeah, so as a rule of thumb, I'm not super interested in getting blown up.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to yet another episode of Zillennial Money. I am always your host, Andy, and we got kind of a doozy today. It's the Donald Trump special, and as the name suggests, you'll soon find out why. But before I jump right into it, we do have our usual full house. So let me pass it to the guys to introduce themselves for audience members who might be new.
Hello. So what's up, guys? My name is Dominic, and please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, as well as our clips channel, and let's get the ball rolling.
Hey guys, Tristan here. We've got a pretty packed docket full of Donald Trump and all that stuff. So I'll throw it back to Andy to take us into that.
Yeah, just as a word of warning, if there is one episode that will get us canceled, it'll probably be this one. So if this is our last episode, it was nice knowing you all. And props to our audience for supporting us so far. I can't believe we're already 27 episodes in. So hopefully we don't get canceled and we can keep on doing this for months and years to come. So without further ado, let me jump into today's story. So I'm sure you guys know what today's major story is. I know it's been almost a week since it happened, but this is the first time we're covering it on this show. And of course, I am talking about the assassination attempt on former U.S. President Donald Trump, who is also the Republican nominee running for re-election. So just as a brief synopsis of what happened, I believe this was on Saturday when he had a rally in Pennsylvania in a city called Butler. And this is significant. I guess the location is significant because Pennsylvania is a very big swing state. So, it's kind of tilting on the edge, always flipping between, or at least for this election cycle, is flipping between Republican and Democrat. And it's kind of like, at this point, is anybody's game who's going to win this state. And it has 19 electoral votes. So it's quite a large amount of electoral votes. Again, you need to, for audience members who might not know how the American systems work, you need to collect 270 or more electoral votes to win the presidential election. And Pennsylvania alone has 19. So obviously both sides are trying to battle for this state. And this is where Donald Trump decided to have his rally. So I'm showing a map as to exactly what happened. So it's labeled pretty nicely, right? You can see that there's a stage on the left side of this map, and then that's where Donald Trump was speaking. And in front of him is a huge audience, and then there's bleachers behind him, and then there's like a building behind the bleachers, which is where the Secret Service set up their counter snipers to prevent issues like what we've seen happen. However, there's been a lot of debate as to like how they could have missed the gunman, because there was a shooter, and he the shooter set up on a building that was only 150 yards away from the stage, which it's absolutely baffling how like you let a shooter get that close, right? So if I remember correctly, a trained sniper, in like a professional sniper in the military, can hit a target up to a kilometer away. So 150 yards is about, I think, 130 something meters, right? So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So, a trained sniper can hit something from 1,000 meters away. And this gunman, who was, he was only like 20 years old, and he wasn't, military trained as far as I'm aware. He managed to get on this roof that was only 150 yards away, so 130 something meters away. He took, I think, 3 or 4 shots at Trump. And you can see there's another map down here where it's like less cluttered. It's like more of just a Google Maps type of map, and then you can see that the picture below that is what happened, right? So Trump was, I think he was talking about immigration, and he was pointing to a chart that he was showing, and because he was pointing to his chart, he tilted his head to point and look at it, and that's what saved his life. Because as you can see, this is like literally 1 second. The first picture is 1 second before, like the bullet hit him, and he was looking sort of maybe at the crowd, right? And then as you can see, if he had not moved his head, the bullet would have pierced his head and went through like the back part of his brain. But then because he changed his posture, he pointed at this at the chart. He swiveled his head at the very last second, and the bullet ended up grazing his ear. So he was he was bleeding from his ears, but like it missed all the vital parts. And then by the time the second or third shot came, he realized that he was being shot at, and he ducked. And then that's when the opportunity to get him was gone. And then I think it was within another like 5 to 10 seconds, the Secret Service snipers spotted the shooter and returned fire and killed the shooter. So Donald Trump literally dodged multiple bullets. So he's, like people are putting his face on Neo from the Matrix, right? Like dodging the bullets. Like he's super lucky to be alive, honestly. And, just looking back at this picture, I said to all my friends that day that we were, half an inch away from total annihilation. And, that sounds like really hyperbolic, but I'm actually not kidding, right? Because think about what would have happened if Trump was killed, right? So regardless if you love or hate Trump, I think we can all agree that if he was assassinated, this would not be a good thing at all, because the Republicans, the Trump supporters would think that, oh, maybe like Joe Biden ordered it or whatever, right? There'd be conspiracy theories left and right. And there's still conspiracy theories, even when the assassination failed. So imagine if it was successful, right? And then like the Democrats would be like, oh, a lot of like the more extreme left wing were even kind of like, celebrating that there was an attempt on his life and saying that, oh, how could the shooter have missed? I wish they didn't miss, and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think that this level of political discourse that we've already seen from a failed assassination attempt is incredibly concerning. And I could only imagine what would have happened if it was successful, right? So this is why I believe I am not being hyperbolic when I said that we were half an inch away from total annihilation, because like it would have been a civil war, quite frankly, right? So luckily that didn't happen. And what we got instead was, if you scroll down to the next picture, this is like an epic picture, right? I mean, even if you hate Trump, I think that you have to agree that this is like absolutely epic. Him like raising his fist in defiance with blood like coming across his face and pouring from his ear, and the American flag in the background. So I was saying to my friends how like and to you guys, like Tristan and Dom, I was saying to you guys how if you had $1 million, or if you had $100 million, not even a million, right? Like if you had $100 million, which I believe Trump does, you could not buy a picture like this, right? Like you could try and buy it, but like it wouldn't make sense if it didn't have a story, right? So Trump just got this picture for free pretty much, and this picture is going to be on t-shirts, and it's going to be everywhere. And there's a lot of opinions online, which I don't think is outrageous, to say that this image might just win Trump the election, because he basically got this image for free, right? And let me just tell you why it's so epic, because it reminds me of this little piece of history. This next picture is Iwo Jima in 1945. So if you guys don't know, this is World War II, and during 1945, the campaign across the Pacific, the American army was hopping from island to island, battling Japan, and Iwo Jima was a really hard fought battle where the Americans took heavy casualties trying to take the island. And when they finally did, they raised the flag. And this is the original photo is black and white, but this one is colorized. I think they did a great job on this. So it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just like reading too much into this, but the Trump picture kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, American exceptionalism, American spirit triumphing over, violence and tyranny and all that stuff. But yeah, anyways, maybe some people who hate Trump feel different, and I totally like understand if you do. I'm just saying my opinion, right? Anyways, so yeah, the next picture, a tweet again, as I said, yeah, 125 meters away, so I was close. The shooter was 125 meters away, and yeah, there's been a lot of debate about how this could have happened, because now I'm also reading some reports that the Secret Service actually spotted the shooter beforehand for like half an hour, and they were just monitoring him, and they didn't know if he was like a spectator because he was outside the hard security perimeter. So they didn't know whether he was like he was just a spectator or if he was an assassin. And I guess they didn't realize what was going on until he pulled out a gun, and then by that time it was too late because he already taken a few shots at Trump. So I think that there's been debates online whether or not this shooter had inside connections or there was some type of conspiracy again, right? I'm not trying to peddle conspiracy theories. I'm just saying I've seen military experts say that, like, if you were going to take a shot at Trump, like, where else would you go, right? There's only one roof that's remotely close to the stage besides the building that was behind Trump, which was where the counter snipers were set up. So like if you were going to cover one roof, that's the only roof that you would cover, and yet it was not covered. And apparently there were Secret Service agents inside of that building where the shooter was on the roof of, but like they didn't do any good because they were inside the building and the shooter was on top of the roof. So like it's just multiple layers of security failure that led to this near disaster, right? Like that led to like literally the like American country, the entire United States sinking into potentially what could be a civil war. So yeah, was this a conspiracy or was it just negligence? Maybe we'll have a debate on that later. But I just want to kind of maybe go through a little bit of the reaction to the online reaction to this assassination attempt. So first of all, because Trump survived, now he's like getting all the pity points and all the scene points from this like the photo that I just shared of him raising his fist, and also like just a lot of extra fame in general. And the poly market betting odds for Trump winning the next this 2024 election has gone up to 70%. And Joe Biden has dropped to 17%. And to be honest, like we don't even know if it's going to be Joe Biden on the ticket. Like if I were to bet, I would say probably it's not even going to be Joe Biden, because there's already a lot of pressure for him to drop out of the race. And I think that by the time the Democratic National Convention, which is in late August, by the time that rolls around, the pressure for him to drop out is going to be too great. And he's not going to be allowed to just, accept the nomination because the top Democrats are pushing him out. But anyways, that's another topic altogether. I'm just saying, for regardless of who's running against Trump, it's like a 70% chance of him winning at this point. And more evidence of Trump's surge in popularity. Elon Musk has endorsed Donald Trump. So he's this is a tweet that he said. He says, "I fully endorse President Trump and hope for his rapid recovery." And I know that Elon Musk is seen as an alt-right by people on the left, and you can make an argument. I think that he's definitely shifted right throughout the years. But let me just remind you that a couple of years ago, I think this was when Trump was still president, that Trump used to like not be on good terms with Elon Musk. So he like made this post on I think this is his Truth Social. This was like a couple of years ago, where he said, when Elon Musk came to the White House, he was like begging me for help, and he was, asking me for like all these subsidies, and he was like, building driverless cars had crashed and rocket ships that go nowhere. So like, the typical Trump style where Trump was like kind of insulting Elon Musk. But now I think that all that bad blood is behind them. So yeah. Anyways, I could go on, but let me just take a brief pause right here, actually. Let me toss kind of it's not even a question, but let me just ask you like what were you doing during the do you remember what you were doing during the Trump assassination attempt? I believe this happened in the evening, like 5 o'clock Eastern time ish on Saturday. What were you doing, and what was your initial reaction when you saw the news? And yeah, just start from there, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you exactly where I was. So, um, like my girlfriend's mom and sister were here for the weekend, so we headed on over to Lake Moraine and Lake Louise. That was really nice, but when I got a bit of downtime, I took a look at my phone. Ironically, it's Six Buzz, the first thing that I see, I think it was, and it says like Trump has now been shot in the air. I'm like, what are you talking about? Then I immediately go to our little group chat with like the three of us and like other people. And I was so shocked. Apparently, I was like completely behind on it, and yeah, no, it's extremely shocking. Never would have thought like another shooting like this would ever happen. I think the only other shootings that come to mind is JFK, and I thought that, like there would be security protocols against this by now, but apparently there's a little bit of holes and maybe some stories have been told by other people. We don't know how this all like foretold. We just know that he got shot in the air, and it seems like he's okay now. I think he has a bandage last time I remembered, and I guess things go on, but it's still crazy overall.
Yeah, I mean, there was like, I'm not sure if you saw the animation of like somebody did a 3D modeling of him like tilting his head at the very last minute. And that one was in 3D. So basically, it's the same as the photo of his like head that I just shared, but like animated. Yeah, it was crazy, crazy close. And yeah, I mean, I think you were like at least like 5 hours late to the story, right, Dom? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. You guys are like, "What? You just found out now? So late?" I'm like, "Oh, my bad. I was busy."
yeah. But yeah, it was nobody expected it to happen, right? I'll share my experience after Tristan, but let me toss it to Tristan.
Yeah, so prior to the shooting, I was out no, I was working that day. It was Saturday, right? I was working in the morning and most of the afternoon, and we went to a public pool after I'd been working, and so no phones allowed there. And that was around the time when the shooting happened, which meant that I didn't have my phone. And then after that, we were biking back from the pool, um, and we decided to go get Osmos. And if you don't know what Osmos is, it's very good shawarma. So it was in the waiting outside because we forgot a bike lock. Or no, we didn't. We There was nowhere to lock our bikes actually, so I had to stay with the bikes. So I finally checked my phone then, and that's when I saw the whole drown. I was like, "What the heck is going on?" So it was pretty wild stuff. I still
Yeah.
can't believe that they actually someone actually tried to assassinate Donnie Trump. It's just wild.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's only one roof besides the roof where the counter snipers were on that's like even remotely close to Trump's stage. Like, how could you not have the roof covered? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like I'm almost inclined to believe that it was a conspiracy, but I'm not going to go that far. But let me just maybe share my experience on what happened, like when I saw the news on Saturday night, right? So actually, I I saw this event happen live, and I was just, I think I was I went to Dollarama with my mom, and you guys, in case you guys don't know what Dollarama is, it's like it's the dollar store, right? Like Dollar General, I guess is what like the equivalent of that would be in the United States. But yeah, I mean, I didn't want to go in because like my mom wanted to buy something I didn't want to buy, so like I just stayed in the car and waited for her, and she went inside Dollarama, and then I was just bored, and I was just browsing YouTube, and then I guess maybe like YouTube knows I like American politics stuff, so it starts recommending me American politics stuff. So my top recommended video was the live stream of the Trump rally from Butler, Pennsylvania, and like I wasn't gonna watch it at first, but I was like, there's literally nothing else on, so I might as well pop in and see what he's saying. Like, might as well, right? And then I click on the video, and Trump is like being wrestled by his Secret Service agents to the floor. And then like everyone is screaming, and like all the comments, like because it was a live stream, right? So there were comments enabled, and all the comments were like, "WTF just happened? Like, what's going on? Blah blah blah." Right? Like everyone was so confused, everyone's panicked, and then I immediately I close the video and I go on Twitter to check what happened, and there was nothing on Twitter. So I was actually like 1 to 2 minutes faster than Twitter because I saw it live, and Twitter didn't pick up on it, or X, whatever it's called. X didn't pick up on it until like 2 minutes later. So I saw like this is the first time in my life I've seen like uh, something this big happen live, I guess you can say. Like, never mind like an assassination. Obviously, I believe that this is like the first assassination attempt on a presidential candidate or a former president that a lot of people has ever seen. But like, something to this magnitude, I never actually watched it live. Like I've watched live TV all my life, and this is like the most craziest thing that's happened on live TV that I've seen. So that was my experience, and then I immediately tweeted in the group chat, or posted in the group chat that with you guys that like Trump just been shot. His condition is unclear. I forget exactly what I said, and nobody responded for like the first 5 minutes because you guys were all preoccupied, I guess, and Dom didn't respond for the next 5 hours. Uh, so yeah, anyways, that was my experience. Now let me move on and talk about the other stuff, right? Because I went through maybe like the presidential odds of like Trump's at 70% likelihood of getting elected, and then like he's got all these endorsements and stuff from Elon Musk and people like that, and he's got that photo of him raising the fist. So just giving you guys an opportunity to maybe respond to that. Like, what do you guys think of his election odds? Do you think he's going to win now, or did you think that he was going to win before? Why or why not? And regardless of whether you think, like, if you didn't think that he was going to win before, do you think he's going to win now? And that's the first question. The second question is, yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on, the endorsements and like Elon Musk endorsements and all that other stuff, or anything else I've talked about so far?
Well, like fact of the matter, I think even before this whole shooting incident, I think people were pretty adamant on going on Donald Trump's side. I think the like cherry on the top of the sundae was the presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Obviously, Biden isn't in a healthy situation or mindset at the right now necessarily, and so people are saying Donald is like a good option because he's the leader of the opposition, right? Generally, people in American politics and Canadian politics only vote for like one side or the other. So if one side isn't really working, they're probably going to vote for the other side. They're not going to vote for like, the American version of NDP. Arguably some may, but I think the vast majority of people would just vote for Donald Trump just because I think he's the next best thing. And I think with this whole shooting and the publicity he's getting, I know it's bad, but it also could be good. I think this is like literally like I said before, the cherry on the top. So I think he made you pretty good. And with like celebrity endorsements, I guess they're thinking the same way too as well. They're thinking, oh, okay, this is like the best choice we got. I think this is what we need to do. And yeah, people are just like endorsing Donald Trump, which is like pretty unheard of, like maybe 4 years ago and more. But you know, we're in 2024, so it is what it is. Yeah.
For before, I think that if he was against Joe Biden, I think he was going to squeak by a victory. I thought it was going to be fairly close, but I still thought he was going to win. I think that maybe that realm has increased a little bit because of this attempt. I think that the way that he handled it made him look better after the attempted assassination. Whereas I think that Biden, the more we see of him, the worse he looks. So I think that from that perspective, I think he will be receiving a lot of utility from this because he had, well, because he didn't die, obviously, and because he was able to show strength and you know, he's not dropping out of the race, so it's showing that he's not afraid and that like he's you know, willing to put it on the line for his country. At least that's the perception. Whether or not that the you know that's true or not is open to interpretation. Again, we aren't in Donald Trump's head, but I think that it's pretty clear that this is going to be a net gain, given that he's not dead for him. So I think whether or not you're happy about that result, I think it really depends on what your beliefs are on his policies and him as a person. So I'm not going to really speak to that too much. I'd like to remain as neutral as possible. So on that front, I think that and I think I kind of want to just also touch on the fact that I've seen a lot of people be like, "Oh, it would have been good if he got actually shot and like died or whatever." And I'm like, I think that gets really risky, that kind of thought process, because you know you're getting into a very angry populace that is by and large more armed. And if they're blaming the Democrats on it, you could get into a very volatile societal situation very rapidly. Maybe not full blown civil war, but I could see a lot of rioting and that kind of thing. So I think the people who have been kind of suggesting that it would have been a good thing, I think. I don't think there's been many evidences where an assassination of a politician has been a net positive for a country. So on that front, I just think that that's not ever going to be the takeaway. Just for the people who are who would have celebrated if he had actually been killed. I don't think that the result of that would have been what you wanted. Even if you know you have a pure hatred of Donald Trump, I don't think the net result would have been something that you would have been happy about. So I feel like I need to emphasize that because I think I've seen a surprising amount of people talking about how and I'm sure some of them are joking, but I'm fairly confident not all of them are joking. And I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, even if someone is joking, I really don't think that these kind of jokes are helpful, or I really don't think people should be making these types of jokes. I understand there's a lot of people that are angry towards somebody like Trump, right? Like you guys know that I'm very disapproving of Justin Trudeau here in Canada, but I would never wish for him to get shot or get assassinated. I would not wish for him to like come to any physical harm, because like you said, Tristan, like we can't go down this road of political violence and political assassinations, right? It's just gonna, because it's like, if there's a politician that you hate and then you're cheering that they got assassinated, well, then what's to stop somebody from the other side to assassinate the candidate that you support, right? And then it just degrades into a civil war. And this is the kind of point that I'm trying to drive through, where it's like, even if you're joking, if you don't make it clear, first of all, people might not be like fully clear that you're joking, and they might take you seriously. And that's problem number one. And even if it's clearly a joke, then, I think you're like kind of cracking open that Pandora's box a little. But yeah, Tristan, sorry I cut you off. I just wanted to make that point, but finish your thought.
Well, to be fair, I do think that when you're with a certain group of friends, having a little bit of dark humor, gallows humor is acceptable, as long as everyone is in agreement that, or everyone is aware, whether explicitly or implicitly, that what is being said there is a joke and not to take it seriously. So I think that there is some room for humor on this front. I just think that where the issue lies, where the line is foggy, right? Whereas if I'm in a group of friends and we all know that, this would have been bad, and we're all in agreement this would have been bad, everything is fine if someone makes a joke. But if you're not sure they're joking, that's when it gets a little bit iffy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would also argue that there's a difference between people joking between friends, like just in person, and putting stuff on social media and trying to influence a large group of people, or like, for famous people, because a lot of musicians and pop stars and stuff like that, people in Hollywood tend to be left leaning. So, I would imagine a lot of them, at least deep down inside, harbor kind of like a little bit of joy that potentially something bad could have happened to Trump. In which case, if they use their influence at public events and on social media to kind of spread this type of, jokes that imply that political violence is acceptable, then I think that's really problematic. So I think that we got to maybe draw a line there as well. Tristan, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
I agree that social media and stuff, and particularly text-based communication, but anything where you're not in a setting in which everyone who is going to be observing the humor is in agreement that it is a joke, I think that that is where you run the risk. Because if I make a joke about getting paid by some political party, and I'm clearly joking, I'm not paid by them, and I'm making a joke, but then someone who doesn't get the joke then goes and runs off and is like, they're paid by this political party, then suddenly it changes. It's like, obviously a different meaning than what we're intending, because it was a joke. It's not real. It's like how like YouTubers like Linus Tech Tips made jokes about like being Nvidia shills or paid by Nvidia, and then people are like, they're actually paid by Nvidia. No, they're just kidding. It's a joke, and it's funny as long as everyone knows that it's a joke. But then when you're broadcasting it, there will inevitably be people who don't understand that it's a joke, and as such, you have to be very careful about what you're saying as a joke, because of the way it will be interpreted by a lot of people who are not on the same wavelength as you, right?
Yeah, and I also think there's a difference between like joking about a shooting and joking about being like paid for a company to like pump and dump the stock or whatever, right? Because like, it's pretty bad if you pump and dump the stock as well. I'm not saying that shouldn't be a crime or anything, but I think that we should probably agree that that's on a different level, because it's like a white collar crime, like a financial crime, right? Versus actually taking a gun and shooting someone. So I think that that's like an important difference that we need to distinguish as well. And yeah, my point is that we can't go down this path of just political violence, right? Because this is what happens in tyrannical countries or banana republics, or just unstable authoritarian countries tend to have like these types of issues where if somebody goes against the establishment, then the establishment finds some way to take them out, or there's just a civil war and there's two sides that are like actually physically fighting each other. So this is kind of the point, right? To all those people that are cheering on, Donald Trump potentially getting assassinated, it's like, hey, like your whole basis is that, if Trump is elected, he'll become a dictator. He'll like put America down the path of fascism. And it's like, well, if you support political assassinations, like who's the fascist, right? Like by supporting this type of violence, you're bringing about like fascism and like authoritarianism and just banana republic civil war more than anything that Trump could do. Because even if Trump is reelected, I disagree with the premise that Trump is going to be a dictator. By the way, I think even if you have those concerns, I think there's enough checks and balances to prevent like any president, not just Trump, but any president from fully taking over and becoming a dictator, right? Because the American Constitution is set up in a special way. So, I mean, I don't want to get into a debate about how much the president can subvert the Constitution if he wants to, but my point is that like you can't encourage political violence because you then become the villain that you're trying to destroy, right? It's kind of like the Batman quote, it's like you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Like if you encourage this political violence, then like you're worse than your idea of Trump. It is what I'm trying to say. Now, before I move on, actually, let me just bring it back a little, because I think, Dom, you mentioned a point earlier that I wanted to get back to you on and get back on your opinion on, which was, these political endorsements from famous people. So I think we established that there's been quite a few political endorsements. And let me just read out another one. So it's Bill Ackman, who, if you guys don't know who Bill Ackman is, he's one of the he's a investor, and he's the CEO of Pershing Square Capital, who's like a big hedge fund, I guess you can say. And yeah, basically Bill Ackman formally endorsed Donald Trump along with Elon Musk. So I think before you call him alt-right, he was kind of like in between, and he's said so before himself that he wasn't ready to endorse Trump. And I believe that he said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he said he voted for Biden in 2020, but now he's endorsing Trump. So let me just read you the full tweet. It's a little bit long, but I think it's worth it. So Bill Ackman says, "I'm going to formally endorse Donald Trump. I came to this decision some time ago, as many ex-followers have already understood from my supportive posts of Trump and my criticism of POTUS Biden." POTUS stands for President of the United States, Biden. The reason why I have not yet formally done so is that I want to explain my thinking in more detail and address the arguments put forth by others against Trump. I want to make the case thoughtfully and convincingly. Today, when one announces an intention to support Trump, Biden supporters who know me tend to assume that I have lost it. I assure you that I made this decision carefully, rationally, and by relying on as much empirical data as possible. It will take a long-form post to explain my thinking. I might even break my own record. And this is kind of like a little bit of a joke, because Bill Ackman has, like, he likes to do really, really long X posts. Right, ever since that like X or Twitter got rid of that limit to like how many characters you can post, he's like taken full advantage of that. And he does like super long essays, basically. But yeah, he says that eventually he might make a post that breaks his own record. So we'll see about that. But yeah, anyways, back to the post. I just haven't had the time nor felt the urgency to write the post, as we are still a few months away from the election. I am explaining my conclusion now in response to many questions I have received on the topic, so that I am formally on the record. You, of course, don't need to care about my opinion, so feel free not to read my post when it appears. That said, I believe the upcoming presidential election is one of the most consequential elections in my lifetime. So I am taking the proper time to articulate observations that I will share widely and for which I assume important responsibility. I have had the benefit of spending a few hours recently with President Trump, so I will have firsthand observations to share. As always, I respect everyone's right to form and share their own views on this important topic. Basically, he didn't go into that much detail about exactly why he supports Trump. Again, he says that he'll make a long form post explaining why. But here's another example of someone who was on the other side, who voted for Biden in 2020, who's willing to come to the Trump camp. And I believe that, like, believe it or not, Elon Musk said that he voted for Biden in 2020 as well. So I know a lot that might come as a shock to some of you, and I could try to find the citation for it, but if you just look it up, like you'll find that I'm pretty sure that that is the case, right? So a lot of people think again, Elon Musk is this alt-right personality, but he hasn't always been, supportive of the right, right? Because he voted for Biden in the past, and again, a lot of these Silicon Valley people tend to be left leaning, but now we're seeing a little bit of a shift. So back to Dom's earlier point, like you mentioned that we've seen a lot of these elites endorse Trump. My question to you guys is, why do you think that is? Right? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's just like an accumulation of so much. I think people are just simply fed up with the current state of, I guess, for the people downstairs, like the United States of America. I think their circumstances are not too good. And I guess the third time I'll like mention it, the cherry on the top is just the presidential debate, and Biden's overall performance wasn't really to satisfaction for a lot of people, and like totally not healthy at all. So I feel like people are like trying to swing the other way now, seeing as how, um, like I mentioned too, Donald Trump's the opposition, and it seems like he has like a lot more going on. And to be frank, like we did have a pretty decent economy, like um, while Trump was in office, and I think there were some pros, but I'll try to stay neutral as well, like much of like what Tristan was saying. But yeah, I feel like people are probably most likely going to vote the opposition direction. Even like people who are reputably not normally doing that probably might well this term just because of all the compounding circumstances. So yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I think that a lot of these people are voting in their self-interest, because I think that because of the things that Donald Trump has said, for example, like cutting corporate taxes and all that kind of stuff, the people who tend to be the ones who are having these endorsements for Trump and just in general tend to be wealthy people who have a lot of sway in like company, corporate, company, all that stuff, right? Like they're business people, right? Which means that they directly stand to benefit from a corporate tax cut, which other people may not. So, for example, like a movie star might not have a company per se that they're set up for as their um, primary source of their wealth, right? Because they're being paid for their acting, not necessarily being paid for a company's growth, right? Which means that I would say that these endorsements, to me, to be frank, I don't really hold a ton of value for people's endorsements overall, just purely because in my opinion, and this goes for people in general, people should be voting in their best interest, right? And so a rich person who's a business person who is voting in their best interest, those interests may or may not be aligned with my best interests, right? So I'm not going to change my opinion on who I am or I'm not going to vote for based on their opinions, because their opinions that are in their best interest are likely not aligned with my opinions and what's in my best interest. So, I think it's clear that there is a there's a significant amount to gain for these individuals for endorsing Trump, and maybe they agree with him, maybe they believe he'll do a better job. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, there is a significant upside to them being aligned with Trump over Biden either way. So why would you, like, in a best case scenario, like, you align with Trump, you get corporate taxes cut, you make more money, great. In a worst case scenario, there's still probably going to be benefits for the company, and either way, you're still better off, right? Whereas, and since a lot of the Democrats' concerns tend to be more along the lines of stuff that is social items. So, for example, like the whole abortion discussion. Well, if you're a company, that's not really a factor. And if you're someone who's leading a company who the primary amount of your wealth is from the company, I mean, you can just go live in a different country, but there are different social rules, even if you have your company in the States, because you have more money. So I just think it's like, I don't hold a ton of weight to them, is I think really what it comes down to. I think that they're allowed to give their opinions, but I would take every person, including ours, for sure, including ours. I would take anyone's opinion on this kind of stuff with a grain of salt, and I would come to your own conclusions on who you would want to vote for and what is in your best interest and what is your top priorities.
Maybe I would like to perhaps push back on some things that you said. I think, in general, I agree with what you said, but I think the one thing that I would push back on is I would push back on the premise that, like, because it seems like you were trying to imply that rich people tend to lean more Republican, right, or lean towards a right side in general, because the Republicans are more friendly towards corporations, more friendly towards rich people. I do think that might be a factor. However, as I said, people like Bill Ackman, people like Elon Musk are like, I think they generally vote left, if, like, believe it or not. And when you look into like the Silicon Valley elites, especially like the tech elites, although they are rich, they tend to vote left as well. So I believe that if you actually look into like the circle of elites in America, there's like actually most of them are Democratic leaning, left leaning. Now I know, like, initially it seems counterintuitive. It's like, why would they support the Democrats when they when the Democrats are seemingly less business friendly? Well, I think that a lot of it has other factors too, right? Because there's personal reasons as well. And for Bill Ackman, I think his wife is Israeli, or she's Jewish. So it's like, like, maybe he's upset about the way that Biden has handled the Israel-Gaza conflict, right? My point is that there's a lot of like other political reasons why you would support a candidate, even if it's coming from like a Silicon Valley elite or Wall Street elite. So that's the first thing that I would say. And the second thing is that I just want to make it clear that personally, I would never just endorse a candidate because somebody I liked, who I follow on Twitter or something, endorses a candidate, right? So I think we're all pretty good for the host of this show, you, me, Dom. We're generally, I think, pretty reasonable people that can form our own opinions, and maybe like an endorsement from someone who I like, such as Elon Musk, would go a little bit into like kind of making me open my mind. But at the end of the day, I still believe that I'm like making my own decisions and making my own thoughts, right? So at least that's my opinion, if you ask me. Now, back to Tristan, your point. I think that what you said about like the Hollywood elites, like, I think we can agree that at least like musicians and Hollywood elites, and not like Wall Street people or like Silicon Valley people, but like just the Hollywood people, they tend to be overwhelmingly left-leaning, right? But we've seen where Trump is starting to sway some of them as well. So this next picture is Snoop Dogg. So Snoop Dogg used to hate Trump, but after years of beef, Snoop Dogg now says that he has nothing but love and respect for Donald Trump. So I don't know what exactly happened, but it looks like Donald Trump has flipped Snoop Dogg as well. And just like, I could keep on naming examples of people who used to be Democratic voters who are now voting for Trump. So, for example, this is Ben Horowitz. So if you don't know who he is one of the founding partners of Andreessen Horowitz, which, if you don't know what that is, it's also known as A16Z, which is a company that has invested in a lot of crypto projects. Actually, they're like super big on crypto projects or just crypto in general. But they also have a lot of other investments, and they're huge, right? They invest billions and billions of dollars. So the founder of A16Z says that, again, same story, right? You could guess it by now. Voted for Biden in 2020, endorsing Trump now. And one of the reasons he gave, like, this is like an hour-long podcast, more than an hour. So I'm not sure if you guys have the time to watch it, but if you guys don't want to watch it, it's fine. But I'm just gonna pull out like the main point that I think he was trying to say, right? Which was, in his opinion, Trump listens and Biden does not, because Biden is sleeping. Okay, I added the last part, but what he said was, he's pretty dissatisfied at Biden because he wasn't able to get a meeting with President Biden to voice his concerns, right? And I know if you don't know who he is, like, you're kind of thinking, who's this, like, VC guy who's like trying to get a meeting with the president? Of course the president's not going to take the meeting. Well, like, Trump would take the meeting, first of all, and I think he spoke to Trump at one point. And then second of all, it's like, again, A16Z is a big company who invests billions and billions of dollars, who's like, one of the bigger controllers of capital in the United States. And I think that alone is worth like a half an hour meeting just for him to get into the room with Biden to talk to him about, all the things that he thinks the administration could improve. And this has been the experience that a lot of people, not just Ben Horowitz, but like a lot of people have experienced, where they're relatively famous, all things considered, and relatively powerful. People who have a lot of money, who have a lot of influence, they theoretically should be able to get a meeting with the president, but the president just refuses to meet with them. And we've speculated as to the reason why, and maybe it has something to do with Biden's mental decline, right? Where he's just not there. He's not on. He's not turned on like mentally for like most of the day, and he's only available for a few hours of the day where he's cognizant enough to like actually do stuff, and that's not enough time for him to go around meeting all these like Silicon Valley people, right? So that's kind of like the reason where like Biden would just not listen to the concerns of, like, never mind the common citizen, right? Never mind if you're just a nobody trying to like have 5 minutes with the president. Like, you could be the head of like a hedge fund and who control billions of dollars, and Biden would not meet with you, but Trump would, right? And this is the next picture where you can see Chamath Palihapitiya and his wife, and David Sachs is on the other side, who's, if you guys don't know who these people are, they're the co-hosts of the All In podcast. So they managed to get a meeting with Trump, right? To just personally meet him and discuss their concerns with him. And they've said, we're trying to get Biden to come on the All In podcast. Trump came on the All In podcast, by the way. They're trying to get Biden on the show, and Biden would not agree, and the emails all go unread and ignored. And Chamath was saying how he kept on emailing and kept on getting like either no response or just like canned responses, and trying to, like, from his staffers that are clearly not from Biden. And it's like, at one point he realized it's not Biden who's being like disrespectful, which was what he thought initially, is that there is no Biden, right? Biden is not there. And it's just his staffers that are not kind of willing to let Biden meet with people because, again, it's pretty clear that Biden is cognitively like he's declined too much to be able to have normal meetings with normal people to talk about big ideas. And I think that this is the fundamental problem, right? And again, we've seen like other endorsements from people who might be otherwise left leaning. So, for example, Kathy Wood from ARK Invest, and who publicly said, she'll vote for Biden, she'll vote for Trump because she thinks that Trump will be better for the U.S. economy. Now, I know, Tristan, you're going to say that this is clearly out of self-interest because she runs an investment fund, sure. But again, these people, I believe she voted for Biden in 2020 as well, or there's at least a high likelihood. Maybe, I don't know if she said explicitly who she voted for, but I think we can say that a lot of these people voted for Biden in 2020 who are now voting for Trump instead. And lastly, this is a picture of Jay Clayton, who's the former SEC chairman, who's also endorsing Trump. So, we just have all these examples of all these like people who a lot of them I respect deeply, at least, right? I think these are, people like Chamath, people like David Sachs, people like Elon Musk. These are some of the world's greatest entrepreneurial minds. Chamath was an original executive at Facebook, now called Meta, and David Sachs was a co-founder of PayPal, who's like one of the people from the PayPal mafia, as is called. So these are people that I respect to one extent or another. Kathy Wood, of course, who made that super correct call on Tesla back in the day and made a bunch of money on Tesla. So it's just people I think that think about issues deeply that are now coming around to the Trump camp. And I'm not sure if you guys would agree. Maybe I'm imparting too much of my opinion. So let me toss the question back to you guys. Do you guys what do you guys think about, kind of these Trump endorsements in general? I know we've touched upon this already a little bit, but just, what do you think about a thing when it appears that a lot of intellectual people and deep thinkers are endorsing Trump? Like, could they be onto something, or is Trump still kind of like a no-go alt-right, force that you want to avoid at all costs? I don't know. Take it away.
The thing is, people are pretty probably in between. I would assume, I'm not them, right? I don't know for certain about who they would vote for the next election. That's just my guess. And they're probably just scanning, seeing how everything is and stuff, because we already know that the economy wasn't doing super successful in the 4 years that Biden's been around, because we can sort of say that. So I think with all these recent events that were previously mentioned before in the podcast, I think that was just the cherry on the top for everyone. So it's just a domino effect. That's boom, 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 boom. More people are okay, you know what, Trump, you know what, Trump, 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 Trump. And now we're at this point where I think most of us know how the election's going to end up. And it's just, it's unfortunate for Biden to be not healthy necessarily, not completely cognitive, but it is what it is. And I guess we just move forward with the, presidential election. And yeah, hopefully Trump is okay with this year too. He probably is, but well, I mean, hopefully he is. I don't know, but yeah, I think there's definitely a path that everyone's taking now versus before. So yeah.
So I think I've got some thoughts on all the stuff being said. I think a big factor that maybe we haven't really touched on is the fact that the Democrats bringing a non-candidate as their candidate means that it's really hard to endorse the Democrats. So I think that from a person perspective, I think if I were someone like any of these individuals who have been endorsing Trump, my options are endorse no one and just be quiet, or endorse Trump, because I'm not going to endorse Biden because well, one, it's up in the air as to whether or not he's even going to be the leader, and two, he's so out of it that it makes him really hard to endorse as a candidate, because of the fact that you're essentially agreeing to whoever the Democrat Party determines is the appropriate individual to lead on behalf of him.
Let me cut you off right there. So you brought up a good point. So it's now there's rumors that Biden is going to be replaced on the ticket before the Democratic National Convention. So he might not be the nominee after all. So the rumor is that they're either going to toss it to Kamala Harris, or maybe even have an open primary where they have like a speed run where everyone can vote again, where Biden drops out and he's not one of the options anymore. So if the Democrats do that, do you think that would you personally endorse anyone from the Democratic side whose name is being tossed around, whether it be Kamala Harris or whatever? And if not, like, do you think that it'll make this like issue better, where like Democrats can maybe put up somebody who's actually like cognitively there at least, even though if they might not be that likable either? So like, do you think how do you think that would change the game?
I don't think. I think the big issue is that they don't have anyone with enough notoriety, generally positive notoriety, that I can think of that would be a good alternative to Biden. And I feel like that's kind of the problem that they're in, is that if they get rid of Biden, who the heck do they put in his place? Because I think I've seen Kamala Harris talk like twice ever. If you put her in a crowd, a line of 50 people, I'm not 100% certain I could pick her out, right? Maybe like 5 or 10 I could probably do it, but like 50, no, basically no chance, right? So I think that the big problem with that strategy is that they've got to get a new candidate with a lot of coverage and a lot of general awareness and good policies at the same time. So I think it's really difficult, and I honestly don't know if they've got enough time to communicate all of that to us before the election, right? Like, it's not like we're 2 or 3 years out. We are like 6 months out, right? Or not even 6 months, like 3-4 months out, right? So it's not a lot of time to be flipping the candidate over. So I could see there being people who are endorsing a new candidate, and I think that more so those people won't be your sort of swing voters. I think that they are probably more of the people who vote for Democrats more consistently. And also I just wanted to, moving on to a different thought though. I just want to go back to where you were saying, like, how Andy was saying that talk about my assumption that the rich would go with Trump over Biden as a voting in their best interest. I think I need to clarify that I think that the rich benefit from either of these two presidents. Is that, like, it doesn't really make a humongous difference. I think that they may make, like, they'll likely reap the benefits of lower taxes for Trump, but that doesn't mean that they won't reap other benefits from Biden, right? So I think that both of the two major American political parties tend to be, to some degree or another, beneficial to the wealthy. And I think that that's just a part of the fact that the way the presidential system works in the States tends to be in such a way that it benefits people who have money and who have the ability to influence decisions in Parliament using that money. So I think that when it really comes down to is it's not necessarily just a voting in their best interest on that front for the wealthy, and that being you're wealthy, you should vote for Trump or Republican, or you're wealthy, you should vote for Democrat. I think it's like you're wealthy, you're gonna win either way. It's just how do you want to win, right? If you're voting for Trump, maybe that means your company is doing better, and maybe you just believe that the country is better run, or like economy wise, with Trump, or maybe you're of the opposite opinion and you think it's better run under Biden, because like again, I think we've criticized the economy of Biden's and discussed like Trump's economy, but like neither of them have been incredible. They've both had their ups and downs. I think that there's arguments to be made for who was actually better, because the Democrats would always say that they followed Trump. Trump left a mess. Well, we can't say how much of a mess was or wasn't there. And then there's always the pandemic thrown in the mix, so it's really difficult to actually gauge how much how effective their performance was compared to the other. And that's again, the economy is also not everything. It is a big factor in basically everyone's lives, but it is not the be all and end all. So if there are large political issues that take precedence over that for you, then I feel like I can see the sway of the either side, right? So I think it's just I think that pretty much covers it.
Yes. So we've talked about this in the past, and I think maybe we can offer more of a unique perspective because we're Canadian, and we talked about this in the past. Where here in Canada, or at least I've noticed a trend that the wealthy elite tend to support the Liberals, and the Liberals is Justin Trudeau's party. In case people who are watching don't know, so the Liberals are a left-leaning party. So I find that a lot of rich people tend to actually support the Liberals because, well, number one, they're the governing party right now. So a lot of people might, like, if you're doing well financially, you might think like, oh, it's nothing needs to change. Like everything is going well for me. So I'm going to like support the current governing party and keep the system in place. And like, yes, the right-leaning parties like the Conservatives in Canada or the Republicans in the States, they tend to favor lower taxes. However, maybe we're also forgetting that the left-leaning parties tend to like to spend money, right? Increase government spending, which drives up inflation, which is also very beneficial for rich people, right? We've said over and over again how beneficial inflation is for the rich at the expense of the poor. So I think there's a lot of reason to support the left-leaning parties as well if you're rich. Not only like will they like drive up inflation and with government spending and stuff, maybe like socially, I find that a lot of all these elites are they harbor very left-leaning views to begin with for whatever reason. I'm not sure if that's like if we need to have a debate on that, but that's just my observation, right? Like what I like to call wokeism, which I know that word is triggering for a lot of people, so I try not to say it, but like what I call wokeism, I feel like it's a lot of it's coming from the Hollywood elites, or like look at what all the latest like shows that Disney has put out that have been called woke and not that popular. It's because they try to do all this like diversity inclusion thing, and then obviously as like a visible minority here in the West, I'm not against diversity obviously, but I think that a lot of these companies take it too far, and I just feel like a lot of the emphasis and a lot of the drive towards these alt left ideologies, call it wokeism or whatever, is coming from kind of the elite class, right? Whether it be companies or whether it be like these CEOs and stuff like that. That's just my opinion, my observation. Feel free to disagree, but yeah, that's what I've noticed. So Yeah, why don't we move on to the next topic if you guys don't have anything more to add? So, kind of on the topic of Trump, there's also another piece of news that came out of the Republican Party, which is that Trump has selected his running mate to be Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. So, to be honest, I don't know too much about J.D. Vance before his name was picked to be the running mate. So as I said, he's a senator from Ohio. But maybe like kind of the most interesting thing that I found when reading into JD Vance's kind of background is that he was actually one of the never Trumper Republicans. So he was like super against Trump back in 2016 when Trump ran for president, and even after Trump won the election in 2016, he was against Trump. So he once called Trump America's Hitler, and he called him a moral disaster. And he called him reprehensible. So all these like bad words, they called him a cynical asshole. So like all these bad words that Vance has had for Trump, apparently he's put all that behind him, and he's a full Trump supporter now. So there's two ways that you can kind of interpret this story, right? So number one is that he's just pandering, right? Like, of course, he's got to suck up to Trump if he wants to be vice president, and I could definitely see some validity in that theory. But there's also another theory that maybe that Trump, like we've gone through so many stories where Trump has convinced a lot of people who were against him to be on his side. So, like, do you think that this could be like a genuine thing, right? Maybe he's genuinely changed his mind about Trump. Maybe Trump like actually won him over in some way, right? And I'm just kind of maybe trying to toss a question to you guys. What do you guys think, right? And by the way, in 2016, JD Vance did not vote for Trump, obviously, because he was super against Trump. He voted for an independent candidate. So yeah, toss a question to you guys. Do you guys think that Vance is just pandering, or do you think that he actually changed his mind?
I get it could be like a mixture between like two. It could be like a personal agenda, like advancement, like people want success in their lives and they'll do whatever it takes to do it. But I think from my perspective, I think I don't know much about him, but I do know that like I'll say, oh, there's something on my screen. There you go. But I do know like from my perspective, like Trump's been a little more active, like socially, like being on a lot of like different, interviews platforms, and like based on those interviews, it seems like he's not as bad as many would expect, and maybe perhaps he thinks the same way. So I think it could be a matter of him changing his mind. Although those are very like aggressive words that he said before, like in the mid 2010s. Maybe he did change his mind. Maybe it was because he's trying to advance his own personal agenda. Who knows? But yeah, it could be a lot of theories, but we don't necessarily know for sure. Could be anything.
I think most likely this is a scenario where um he's come around to Trump sufficiently that he will be capable of doing the role of um, like running mate by potential VP. And I think that that's maybe more so just that there's a combination of he gets an opportunity to be VP potentially, and I think from most perspectives, I think Trump is a shoe in to win, or maybe not a shoe in, but is definitely um, more likely to win than initially expected. So, because of that factor, I think that he is maybe putting past his previous perspectives on this and deciding that the sky didn't fall while Trump was in power in 2016. We made it out of Trump's 4 years, so to be fair, there was a few bumpy roads in there, but at the end of the day, right, we made it through. So I think that he's maybe taken that into account, as well as the fact that if he is in a position of power in the party, maybe he can sway Trump on different decisions and maybe impart some of his own beliefs into it in order to keep him in a more playing ball kind of perspective for him. So I don't know if it's necessarily a complete like, wow, this is now my best friend, but I think it's I think he's realized that if he wants to have any real ability to influence anything, he needs to play ball with Trump.
I know I've beat this drum so many times, but let me beat it one last time, right? I'm leaning towards believing that JD Vance actually changed his mind to endorse Trump. And the reason why I'm saying this is, again, I've been beating the drum of like people who are against him finally like flipping over. And here's like yet another example. Besides Vance and David Sachs, or not David Sachs, Bill Ackman, Elon Musk, all Snoop Dogg, all these people. This is Amber Rose, who is a rapper and model. I don't listen to a lot of rap music, so unfortunately I don't know fully who she is, but apparently she's relatively famous, and she's not what you would expect a typical Republican supporter to look like, right? Because number one, she's a woman of color. Number two, she's got like a big face tattoo, which is against like traditional values or whatever. At least it's against like the social conservatives, and she's pro-choice, which is against a lot of the majority of Republicans. So she spoke at the Republican National Convention. She was invited to speak there, and this is what her views were back in 2016, right? So she stated, when asked about Donald Trump, she stated, "He's just such an idiot. He's so weird. I really hope he's not president." But then in her speech, she says that she realized she was lied to by the media or by leftists or whatever, right? I know it's like kind of politically charged and people don't want to hear that, but this is just, I'm not saying that, right? Like it's her that's saying that. Like she basically, her reasoning was Trump is actually a great guy, and the left has been portraying this image of Trump that that how he's like a disgusting alt-right next Hitler type of person, and it just is not matching with reality, right? And I'm not sure if you guys saw the All In podcast interview. I know I shared the link with you guys, but it is a little bit long, so I can forgive you guys if you guys haven't watched it. But if you did watch the All In podcast interview, I think it was pretty shocking to me the way that like Trump reacted to questions. Like he seemed genuinely thoughtful and answered the questions in a way that I totally wasn't expecting. Because the image that I had of Trump in my head before that was that he is just like this bolstering idiot, this buffoon that just goes on stage and insults everyone he can and calls people names. But what I saw with the All In podcast interview was that he actually was really thoughtful and may I say even respectful, or at least mostly, right? And he was really coherent, which is not what can be said about Biden, who wouldn't even come on the show despite all the podcast hosts inviting him. So yeah, I think that this is like a genuine kind of trend that's happening. And I'm not sure if Trump has gotten older and wiser, and he's like, I'm not sure if you've seen like Trump speak at public events lately, but I think he's toned down his rhetoric a lot as well. If you just compare his debate performance with Joe Biden that happened in June compared to like when Trump was debating Hillary Clinton in 2016, I would say that it's like completely different. And I think that a lot of people just had this like kind of image of Trump in their head that they can't really get past. But we're seeing some people kind of get past that kind of notion and changing their minds. And one last thing about this is David Sachs posted this tweet. It's a list of all the people that, at least I don't know if they were all Democratic supporters before, but at least like all the people that are relatively famous that have publicly endorsed Trump. And of course, it includes Ben Horowitz, Bill Ackman, Elon Musk, like I said. Also, some names to note. I don't recognize all the names, by the way, but I recognize Peter Thiel, right, who's one of the co-founders of PayPal again, and Palantir, actually. And the Winklevoss twins, who's the founder of Gemini, like one of the earliest crypto exchanges. And who else? Palmer Luckey, who's the founder of Andro, and believe we talked about Andro at one point on this show in a previous episode. It's that like drone defense company, and yeah, like the other names I don't really recognize, but yeah, basically it's a lot of people that are endorsing Trump now. I shared with you a super cut of this speech. So the whole speech is 6 minutes long, but I cut it down to 3.5 minutes. I cut out like all the applause and everything. So why don't I play the clip right now for our audience members? I know you guys have already watched it, but let me play the clip now. It's 3.5 minutes. So bear with us. We'll be right back.
Good evening, America. I'm David Sachs, a legal immigrant who worked hard to achieve the American dream. Now I'm concerned those same opportunities won't be there for future generations. After shielding President Biden from a vigorous primary and gaslighting the entire country about his fitness to serve, we still don't know which puppet Democrat Party bosses will install as their nominee, but we know what their agenda will be. 4 more years of chaos and failure, both at home and abroad. My hometown of San Francisco, Democrat rule has turned the streets of our beautiful city into a cesspool of crime, homeless encampments, and open drug use. Democrats, led by border czar Kamala Harris, have allowed millions of illegal migrants to invade our country. They tasked Homeland Security not with stopping the illegal aliens, but with busing them all over our country. Democrats have recklessly spent trillions of dollars of wasteful and unnecessary government programs, setting off the worst inflation since Jimmy Carter. But worst of all, the Biden-Harris administration has taken a world that was at peace under President Trump, and they lit it on fire. President Biden botched the Afghanistan withdrawal, displaying incompetence and weakness for the whole world to see. Then he provoked the Russians to invade Ukraine with talk of NATO expansion. He rejected every opportunity for peace in Ukraine, including a deal to end the war just 2 months after it broke out. Now the war is deep into its 3rd year with no end in sight. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead. Hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars have gone up in smoke. And the world looks on in horror as Joe Biden's demented policy takes us to the brink of World War III. And the administration's policy towards Gaza has been so incoherent that the only thing that pro-Israel and pro-Palestine protesters agree on is the chant, F Joe Biden. President Biden has become the symbol of an America in decline. This may be our present, but it does not have to be our future. We can replace the Biden-Harris cabal with a president who is strong and smart rather than sleepy and senile. My fellow Americans, we need a leader who commands respect and demands reciprocity from other nations. We need strength and savviness in the White House Situation Room, even if the crisis hits after Biden's bedtime. We need a president who can be president and lead, not a puppet controlled by his or her staff. We need order in our cities, order at our border, and order restored to a world on fire. My friends, we need President Donald J. Trump back in the White House. Thank you.
You guys just watched that clip. It's David Sachs making all his points on why, like, he's endorsing Trump and why Biden sucks, basically. So let me just summarize some of the main points in case you guys forgot, because I know it's been maybe a while since you guys have seen that video. But Sachs's main points are, number one, the Democratic Party lied to the American people about Biden's mental condition. So just on that fact alone, they don't deserve the voters' trust, because they've been peddling this idea that Biden's fine. He could totally run against Trump and he could totally win, when the reality was he's not all there. He can't debate. And like, who's been running the country, basically, right? Like, it's pretty clear that he's had a lot of help from his staffers who are like, making policy at this point. And that was like seen as a conspiracy theory back in the day, but it looks like the conspiracy theory is real. So that's point number one. Point number two, the border, right? This is one of the weakest points of the Biden administration. I don't know if anyone wants to debate on that, but I think that that's true, right? Like, the border is totally out of control. Number three, Biden helped provoke the Ukraine war, which I know a lot of people have issues with that statement. I won't get into that. Like, this is not my personal opinion. This is David Sachs, right? I'm just summarizing it, so don't get mad at me. But David Sachs says that Biden helped provoke the Ukraine war. And there is a little bit of truth to the second part of this, which was he says that a peace deal was negotiated 2 months after the war started. And it was rejected because basically, like, the Biden administration worked with Boris Johnson, who was the UK prime minister at that point, to get Zelensky to back out of the deal so that, like, they can keep on fighting, because the West wanted to degrade Russia. So there is some truth to this, because there is a testimony from the former Israeli prime minister who was part of that negotiation process that happened in Istanbul, Turkey. His name is, the former Israeli prime minister's name is Naftali Bennett. And Bennett stated that, they had a deal that was ready to go, that both sides had pretty much agreed upon, but it was revoked at the last minute because, Boris Johnson and Biden wanted Zelensky to fight. And they promised Zelensky a bunch of weapons, a bunch of money, so that they can carry out this war. And the goal was to degrade Russia, right? And now we're like, 2.5 years into the war, and it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. And, we have hundreds of thousands of deaths from both sides. It's a big disaster. So this is one of the big criticisms that Sachs has against Biden. And I think that, at least with we can have a debate about who provoked the war, whether it was Putin or whether it was NATO. But I think the second part is pretty damning, in my opinion. So the fourth part is Biden did not handle the Israeli-Gaza conflict well. So he says famously that the only thing that the both sides can agree upon, Palestine and Israeli supporters can agree upon, is the phrase "F Joe Biden," right? Because both sides are super mad at Biden for his handling of the Israeli-Gaza conflict. And this next point is that Biden's, again, like I said, Biden's administration is run by staffers, right? Because if you just look at some of the tweets that have come out of, like, the Joe Biden official account, it doesn't seem like, it's like millennial humor, right? Or like Gen Z humor. It doesn't seem like Biden really gets it. It doesn't seem like he's in charge of tweeting by himself. It's just his staffers that are tweeting for him. And if the staffers are in charge of all his, like, social media accounts and conveying the messaging, are they actually directing the policy as well, right? We have to think about that. And the next part is, crime in Democrat-run states and cities, i.e. California, San Francisco in particular, is totally out of control. And I'm sure for those of you who have been to San Francisco, especially at night, you can probably corroborate that. It's, like, very not safe in San Francisco. Yeah, so my question is that's pretty much all the main points. And my question to you guys is, what do you guys think of what David Sachs says? Is there any validity in what he said, or is he just being, alt right? If he just being like super politically biased, what are your thoughts?
So like factually, I think everything that you just said and based on what I watched does, add up. It does seem to be true, but I think it's coming from like an extremely biased, perspective. Although, like I personally felt like he was totally like he had the mindset that he was like trying to defend his, his boy kind of thing. So I don't know if that like, you know, tasted well with me or like sat well with me like necessarily, but on the points perspective I do like agree with most of what he said. And then I think he was also trying to poke the bear a bit, like he was talking to the, I mean most of us are, to be honest, as though like Biden's like a baby or something, like, oh, don't, like he has a bedtime that he needs to abide by, like this isn't like the president that we need to have, like, like leading the United States of America kind of vibe. So I was getting that out of the whole interview as well. Points valid. I just think maybe a little too open about his biasness, but yeah.
No, but to defend David Sachs maybe a little, it's like I think what he said was, what if a crisis happens after 8 p.m.? It's like, and then it's like, if that happens, I can't be sure that Biden is not sleeping, and like I can't be sure that he won't, like, he'll be able to wake up if a crisis happens after 8 p.m. And that's unacceptable, because what if a crisis actually does happen that needs the president to be there, right? And this is probably not the case when it comes to, like, Xi Jinping from China or like Putin from Russia, right? Like the America's rivals or enemies, even at this point, like they have better functioning governments under their leaders compared to Biden in the White House. So if there's a power imbalance, if there's like this issue that happened that affects America and it happens after 8 p.m., like what do you do, right? Like, it's a staff, are Biden staffers gonna like handle the situation, or is Biden gonna be able to be there and be in control and be cognitively there and be 100% up for the job, right? And I think that that's a really valid criticism, although he said it in a way that, like, is trying to make fun of Biden, which, I think is warranted when you're the president, right? Like, if you're the president and you're not doing your job properly, then I think is warranted that people make fun of you. So I don't really see any issue with what David Sachs said, even though it was kind of like a jab at Biden. But yeah, Dom, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, I'll add a little something. Yeah, I guess I do agree with you. It's like, imagine there's like a famous clip on like YouTube. You can probably find it of, I know it's gonna get a little dark, knock on wood, like, but when the Twin Towers got like, like intertwined with the airplanes, like there's a clip of President Bush in like a classroom, and then I think like the Secret Service kind of whispers in his ear, and then he's just playing, happy until like he has to leave or whatever. Could you imagine like the same thing happening? Like, God forbid, like knock on wood, like if the Empire State Building got hit by an airplane, like, and it was late at night, like would Biden like not wake up? He would just be asleep in bed. He's like, huh? Like what's happening? Like, I guess, yeah, like, that does make sense. Like I do see your point. So like it would be good to have a president like, wake up from their nap and then like, at least make the speech to be responsible for like the whole US. But okay, fine. Fair play. Tristan's turn, I guess.
Yeah, so I think my opinion on his speech was that it criticized Biden a lot, and I think for fairly reasonable things to criticize Biden on. The only thing that I can say is that it doesn't really talk about anything that is being offered as an alternative. It's not like he was like, referencing anything Trump was going to do or any of the Republicans would do. It was very much just like the Democrats and Biden bad. And I feel like it's very easy to criticize the party that's been in power. It's not so easy to tell us what you're going to do instead, or what is going to be done instead. So that's just one piece that I was kind of thinking of with regards to that. And I think there's definitely, it's obvious that there are things to criticize Biden on. And I think that it was all very fair what he was saying. I don't think he was saying anything that was out of pocket. I just don't think that there was much in the way of solutioning occurring. It was very much just a roast.
Can't argue with that, but maybe just again to defend David Sachs a little, when you're up on the stage, you only have a certain amount of time, right? So you have around, I guess this speech was 6 minutes. I don't know how much time he actually had or whether he used it all, but you have a limited amount of time to get your points through. And I think that he chose the criticizing Biden route because it's like the most kind of relevant to the concerns of the people, not only like the people at the RNC, but just the American people in general, right? It's like, who's piloting the ship right now and who's like actually in charge of the White House, and look at all these issues that are happening that is not being handled. And I think that that's a very valid way to go about this. As to, you can criticize him for not mentioning what Trump would do in response, but I think that that's maybe more of Trump's personal job, where he could like go to the rallies and say himself, or maybe now that he's picked JD Vance as his running mate, maybe him and Vance could go together to like a rally to say exactly what they will do. And I think that we have talked about some things that Trump will do, and we'll certainly talk about a little bit more later. But I think he proposed lowering the corporate tax rate, which we can have a debate on whether or not we should do that or if that's a good thing. At least he's promised that he's going to fix the border, right? Like he's going to continue building the wall, which, to be honest, I kind of made fun of Trump for this idea back in 2016. But I'm reevaluating kind of the circumstances. I think that building the wall is actually a great idea, because if you look at different countries around the world, like for example, between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, they have like a wall in between. Like they're on the same island, right? They have a wall in between, and Haiti is generally poorer, and Dominican Republic is a lot richer. So, you can argue that it's not humanitarian, right, to like prevent people from coming in. But again, to have a stable country, you need to be able to background check people and be able to, control the amount of refugees you're taking in. And I'm not arguing that we should not like take in any refugees, but I think to have a secure border is the basis of a nation. And I think Biden's letting the country down right now. And Trump is at least saying that he will do that. He will like build a wall, and he will not let the country down. He will fix the issue is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, it's like he was building the wall back when he was president. And at first I made fun of the idea. And to be fair, I was making fun of the idea that like he's going to make Mexico pay for it, which he kind of tried to spin that as like he's, he made all these advantageous deals against Mexico towards America. So therefore, like Mexico's kind of paying for it with these trade deals that favor America, which in my opinion is a total cop-out answer, but whatever, right? Like the make Mexico pay for it part is like, I'm not gonna like hold it super against them, because I think that was kind of like a pie in the sky in the first place. But building the wall, I think, is actually, like, now that I evaluate it, a good idea. And if you talk to border agents, I've seen like interviews of people who like went to the southern border and interviewed border agents. They were saying, yeah, like the places that have the wall, it's effective, right? And the only reason why it might not be effective is because the wall wasn't finished, and there's no wall in some parts, or there's gaps in the wall. And what Biden did when he became president, or the Biden administration, is they stopped building the wall, and then there were materials that were ready to go to continue building the wall, and they sold off the materials at a huge loss, for pennies on the dollar, which, those materials were purchased with taxpayer dollars, and they were ready to go. And for whatever reason, Biden decided to discontinue that project and take a huge loss. on taxpayer dollars on those building materials. So I think that was a huge mistake, and we're seeing the consequences of that mistake right now. So I think there's a lot of valid things that to criticize Biden for that I think that Trump would reasonably do better. Again, all of this is debating. Like, we can have a debate about whether or not we believe Trump that he's going to be able to fix this issue. Trump has also promised that he would end the Ukraine war, which, again, it's up to you whether or not you believe Trump when he says that. But at least I would like to move us in the direction of ending this 2.5 year long conflict now that has caused hundreds and thousands of deaths. So that's kind of my opinion. Do you guys have anything more to add, or shall we move on to the next part of the story?
2-second ad.
Mhm.
He is pretty tight with the what do you call it? The prime minister or president of North Korea. So that's gotta say something, He's like stepped over the line like long ago. But yeah, you can continue. I just want to add that.
Well,
Just being
actually,
silly.
since you brought that up, do you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because I've seen arguments from both sides, right? Because like there's people who are obviously against Trump from the left side who says that, look at him, this proves that he's a dictator because he has so much in common with Kim Jong-un that like they get along nicely, right? So there's like that side of the argument. But on the other side of the argument, maybe like you can argue that it's a nice thing for America to get on better terms with countries like North Korea or Russia or countries that we don't like. And the reason for that is it promotes world peace, right? Like if the leaders, even if you don't believe in what they're doing, even if you think that they're a dictator and they're, doing all this bad stuff and against humanity, like even if you think that, you got to be real, right? Like if there's a war between these countries, then that's going to lead to a lot of people dying. So if you have a good relationship with people like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, maybe you can argue that lowers the risk for war. So in the end, like it's better for everyone, right? So what do you think of that? Which side of it are you on?
I think like okay, like this is like a hot take, but like arguably like assume positive intent on people. So like I think from like an individual's perspective, like whatever their mindset is or mindset is on anything, they normally assume they're right. So like if two people are like obviously in like a better relationship, not like a really toxic one, they're more likely are not going to talk things through. Like if the word's like humanitarian and like peaceful, and then maybe peace could be amends. But I mean, that's just all theory. I could be wrong, and then like Kim Jong Un just like does a backstab, and then like we're all screwed. But heck, I don't know. Assume positive intent is like what I think.
Yeah, so generally like a good thing, right? Tristan, your thoughts?
Yeah, so as a rule of thumb, I'm not super interested in getting blown up. So because of that fact, I do tend to be more inclined to be pro things that don't get us into a nuclear exchange with other great powers. I think that people don't tend to think about the fact that this is one of the longest stints of time without a great power conflict, basically ever. So I think we shouldn't take for granted that we've had such a long stint of peace without any major great power conflicts occurring. And so on that front, yes, I understand that we should not be allowing dictators to just do whatever they want. But at the same time, we should not be provoking individuals into something that will potentially cause a far more lethal global conflict, particularly now that we have much more powerful weaponry than we have ever had in the past. So that's just kind of, I don't want to get blown up, is really what it comes down to.
I think, you asked the question of like, what would Trump do differently than Biden, right? So let me just say that we have a Trump presidency, a full 4-year term that we can look back upon to say that like what kind of record Trump might have. And now that like theoretically now he's more experienced and we've said all these like we've seen all this evidence that he might be more tempered this time around. So maybe there's evidence to suggest that he'll be like a little bit more stable and less unhinged this time around. But maybe that's up for debate. But at least we can look for the first Trump term and see that there was no major conflict that erupted while Trump was president, right? And then when Biden became president, we had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. We had the Taliban came back into power in Afghanistan when they've been out of power for decades. And then the Ukraine war broke out, and then the Israeli Gaza war broke out. And, how much should we pin this on Biden is up for debate, but there's no denying that this happened under Biden's watch. And we can argue back and forth about which exact policies or what things he did wrong or what things he should have done and didn't do. I don't want to get into that. And we don't have 3 hours to debate about that. But it's just the fact is that there was relatively more peace under Trump than there was under Biden. So I think that fact is undeniable. Right. So, Dom, you wanted to say something?
I just want to clear my name here. So I was saying assume positive intent and people are always right from their own individual perspective. I think a lot of the things that are happening in North Korea are pretty messed up, and I'm so sorry for the lives of all North Koreans and their circumstances. I just want to clear that up. I'm not trying to be ignorant or anything. I know it's really hell on earth, and people are trying to find ways to escape. The circumstances are obviously played out from the YouTube videos you see on the internet, and the lives of North Koreans are probably terrible. So I don't want to, confuse any of that. And I'm sorry. I hope everything is better, and I'll clear my name. Yeah, I hope all's good.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say, right? And I think we are all in agreement that we're not supporters of Kim Jong-un and we're not supporters of the North Korean regime. I think that's a thing that people from 99% of people from Canada, US can agree upon, no matter if you're Republican or Democrat, right? My point was that just because we disagree with Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin or whatever, doesn't mean that we absolutely cannot talk to them. If the price of not talking, and we've seen the price of not talking to Vladimir Putin, right? We got a war. So, just because we think that they're disgusting people doesn't mean that we should not try to negotiate with them or talk to them, right? If we get into this pigeonhole of thinking that everyone who disagrees is just the next Hitler and there's no way that we can negotiate with anyone, then you get to this point where global conflict is not only more possible but maybe even likely, right? And that's a road that we don't want to go down. So that was kind of the point that I was trying to make. If there's nothing to add, let me move on to the next part, which the next part is maybe the most controversial part of this video, and hopefully I don't get canceled for this. So I'm not going to put you guys on the spot because I know you two like to remain relatively neutral, but I would like to announce my formal endorsement, for what it's worth, of Donald Trump for the 2024 US presidential elections. And like Bill Ackman was saying, it seems like a fringe thing for me to say. And I know a lot of quite a few audience members probably just turned the video off right here and now. If you're still here, thank you so much. But just hear me out, okay? So just promise to hear me out for the first 5 minutes. And if you think that I'm spewing BS, you can turn off the video. But here's my perspective, right? We've talked over and over again about the issues that America is facing right now. And by the way, my endorsement actually means nothing because I'm not an American citizen and I don't hold I don't have an American passport. I'm not eligible for this election. I'm Canadian. So my endorsement doesn't actually mean anything. So before you get mad at me, just know it doesn't actually matter. I can't vote in this election. But just as a bystander from Canada, I'm endorsing Trump because I think that it's kind of a similar situation to here in Canada, where the current leadership of the government is leading the people down like a very dangerous path. So in America, the big problems like David Sachs was raising, the borders in crisis, the Democrats are, lying to the people about Biden's mental condition. They're being incredibly irresponsible and undemocratic by doing so. And the Biden's administration is run by this like shadow government. So like, and even if Biden is replaced, it's not much better because, in my opinion, they've already lost the confidence of the people, or they should lose the confidence of the people for doing this, right? And all this like issues with the wars that are breaking out and the Biden's handling of them, I think these are extremely valid, and I believe that Trump will do a better job in handling those. So that's kind of my main point. And before you cancel me as an alt-right, the next Alex Jones, let me just say this. So back in 2019, if I were to say to you, hey, electric vehicles were going to take over the world, and everyone's going to want to buy an electric vehicle one day, and eventually all cars will not only be electric, but they will be driverless, right? They'll be autonomous. You would say that that's an insane idea, right? And if I were to tell you, hey, like I still believe in this idea, I'm going to buy Tesla stock because Tesla is the leader in this field, and I'm going to buy a lot of it because I think that they're going to win in this space, and people are going to get converted over. When back in 2019, like 90% of people drove gas cars, or maybe even more than 90%. And then what happened a couple of years later, right? Tesla stock skyrocketed and their sales skyrocketed too. So maybe that fringe opinion wasn't so fringe. Maybe I was just early, right? And this is exactly what happened. Although back then I was a student, so I didn't get super rich off of it. So because I didn't have that much money to invest in it in the first place. But anyways, different story. So back in 2020, I've heard of Bitcoin before, but that was kind of the first time that I thought that it could genuinely be a real thing. Right. So before 2020, I thought Bitcoin was a fringe idea. You're telling me that I should put real money into this magic internet money that nerds use. That's like, that nerds use to buy drugs and guns and whatnot. Right. Like that was a crazy idea. If I told you before 2020, or even some people think this way now, right? If I told you that I'm going to dump a sizable percentage of my net worth into Bitcoin, a lot of people would think that that's a fringe idea. That's absolutely insane. You're absolutely insane for even thinking or suggesting that. But look at what happened with Bitcoin between 2020 till now, right? And I still believe that a lot of people are not really seeing the light, and they're going to see the light very soon when Bitcoin makes this bull run. But I guess we'll have to see about that, whether it can break 100K. But anyways, this is kind of my point, is that what you think of like as a fringe opinion might not be a fringe opinion. I might just be early, right? A lot of with Bitcoin, with Tesla, I think I was right in the end. But when I first suggested this idea, a lot of people said it was crazy, but I wasn't crazy. I was early. So now I'm saying that endorsing Trump is kind of like a similar idea where, we've seen like Trump's past and we've seen how he behaves, and like endorsing Trump means like you're, one of those redneck hillbillies that are like firing guns into the air. This is kind of the idea of a Trump supporter that everyone has, right? But as we've seen, even in 2016, a lot of people voted for Trump. So if 40% of people voted for Trump, maybe his ideas wasn't so radical to begin with. If like 40% of the country vehemently believes in like what he's saying, right? So that's number one. And number two, I think that there is a significant difference between the 2016 Trump and 2024 Trump, where he's mellowed a lot, and his ideas are kind of becoming more moderate and more mainstream. And in contrast, I think what we've seen, a lot of the stuff that Biden has done has been radical, i.e. letting open borders, letting like crime, like not punishing crime in all these like democratic states and cities. And granted, it's not just Biden, it's the Democratic Party in general. I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, like punishing crime, that's mostly a state thing, but whatever, right? So yeah, I think that that's kind of the point that I was trying to make, that I'm willing to adapt to the new reality when the facts change. And if you would listen, in my opinion, I think that the facts are changing, and I keep an open mind, and I'm willing to change my mind. And I think that, like, one last point on this, I think that 80 to 90% of people in this world tend to not like to change their opinion, right? They get cemented in one way of thinking that, like, because some people went to school for like 10 years in finance and be like, hey, you got to have an 80-20 portfolio or 60-40 portfolio, right? You got to have a certain exposure to bonds. You got to have a certain exposure to like ETFs and whatnot, right? And Bitcoin kind of flies in the face of that. It's like, is your theory that you spent 10 years at school for is completely wrong, and that rubs people the wrong way. And I think that to be like successful, I owe a lot of the successes in my life, in my opinion, to being able to rapidly change my mind when the facts change, and keeping an open mind on new ideas. And I think that this is an example. So yeah, I've spoken a lot. I want to give you guys like a chance to respond. Do you guys think I'm crazy? Do you guys think I'm alt-right? Or do you guys think that I have some legitimate points? I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say in response.
I think you're just doing what's best for like your own or like societal like circumstances. I feel like using like facts on historical like events, etc. You've deducted that, oh, okay, this is the circumstances from before, and these are the facts. And I think it would be much better if we like, change that whole story or circumstances. And that's totally fair. I think you have like valid points, facts. So people are entitled to opinionate on like what they want to opinionate about. So respectable. So no problem.
It's a bold choice to announce a legitimate endorsement. I think from my perspective, there is insufficient. I have consumed insufficient content and have insufficient confidence to be endorsing anyone at this point. And that goes for the Republicans or the Democrats, especially given the fact that I don't really have a horse in this race, given that it's America and I live in Canada. At the end of the day, yes, it affects me, but I basically am only affected by the stock market in the States and any trickle through that comes to Canada. So at the end of the day, it's a lot less of a major decision for me and my lifestyle and expectations. So it's not. I don't think I'll be endorsing. I think anyone, and I think that it makes sense the reasons why you are endorsing Trump from your perspective. I can see reasons why someone would endorse. I find it hard to see reasons to endorse Biden himself, but I can understand why people would endorse the Democrats as a party, right? But I think that I will be opting out, and I mean, you do what you want to do, my guy.
Just to clarify, obviously I'm Canadian too, and I also don't actually have a horse in this race, but I felt the need to, like, and maybe a lot of people are criticizing me down in the comments for that right now. Be like, hey, like, why are you commenting on the American election when you're not even an American? Fine, valid criticism. I totally get it. But from my perspective, I'm kind of just doing this out of a concern for society as a whole. Call it concern for Western society, right? Which lumps in, like Western Europe, Canada, US, maybe even Australia too. So call it concern for just like the West in general, right? Because, here in the West, we have a certain set of beliefs like democracy and, freedom and all this stuff. So I think that a lot of the stuff that has been happening, the incessant wars, the uncontrolled border on the south of the United States, all this like shadow government running the White House and all this stuff. Like this is incredibly unhealthy, and I think I just think Trump will be the one to put a stop to all of this. So this is kind of like the fundamental reason that I keep coming back to. And second of all, I just think that if you actually look into Trump's kind of leadership of the Republican Party, you can see that maybe you would disagree with me on this, Tristan, but like I feel that the Republican Party under Trump is actually shifting left socially. And here's the evidence that I have to back it up, right? So here's an article from the Associated Press, which, by the way, is a left-leaning article. So usually they don't have anything nice to say about Trump. But the headline is Republicans move at Trump's behest to change how they will oppose abortion. So you know that the Republican Party is pro-life in general, right? So we can't really expect them to be pro-choice, even if they get a super moderate. But look at what Trump has done, right? So under Trump's leadership of the Republican Party for this year, at least, they're omitting the explicit basis for a national ban on abortion for the first time in 40 years. So for the first time in 40 years, the Republican Party national platform does not include wording that says that they want a national ban on abortion. Now, I know what you're going to say. It's like, that's not good enough because, they reverse Roe v. Wade, and then the states get to decide, and then the red states will be able to ban abortion in the whole state if they want to. Like, I get that criticism, right? But my response to that is that, number one, I'm actually in agreement with the Democrats on this one, where I think that people, like women, should have access to abortion, and I'm pro-choice myself. But I think that there's more than one issue at hand than abortion, first of all, right? Abortion is only one of the major issues that we're facing. And number two, I think passing it to the states could be a solution as well, right? Under the circumstances, right? Because if you know anything about the United States Constitution, it separates there's like very clear delineations of power where, what is a federal responsibility, what's a state responsibility. So it's kind of the system as a whole that's produced this kind of system where the states have a lot of power, more power than usual. So maybe that's one part that us from Canada Canadians might not fully understand. So I think that this is like kind of the most left-leaning that you're going to get out of the Republican Party, where they're not saying that they're pro-choice, obviously, but they're also not saying that they're going to have a national ban. And again, this is the first time in 40 years that they've excluded language for a national ban on abortion. So I think that the Republican Party under Trump is actually becoming more moderate. And if you remember back in 2016, Trump's vice president, Mike Pence, he was a very religious guy, right? Super pro-life, super religious. And, a big concern on why people didn't want to vote for Trump is that, Mike Pence is going to bring all this religious kind of stuff into the pro-life stuff into America, into the presidency or the vice presidency in his case. So yeah, this time, Mike Pence is not the running mate. And from what I've read about JD Vance, he's more moderate. So he's from Ohio, by the way, which is kind of a Trump leaning state now, but traditionally it has been a swing state. So just the fact that he's from a swing state means that, you got to appeal to people from both sides somewhat, versus Mike Pence, who's from Indiana, who's a heavily deep red state, right? So my point is that I think that Trump is moving the Republican Party left socially. I mean, they're still right. They're still a right-wing party, obviously, but I think that you could have gotten someone much worse than Trump from the social conservative side. I don't know if you agree with that statement. Tristan, your thoughts?
like I think that his running mate, for instance, is definitely more not hardline red the way that Pence was, but and I think that's maybe a significant difference. But I think also part of that is because I don't think he needs to convince the Republican folks to vote for him with by having a hardline red guy with him this time, whereas last time he kind of needed Pence on that front. So I'm not sure necessarily how if he's moving it left or not. It's difficult to say. Obviously, they may move left on some issues, but right on others. It's not a clear cut line in the sand. I think for all of these issues and for the overall left right leaning of the party.
No, this time I'm more. Sorry.
Pass on that one. Okay, so I guess I'll share my response to that. So my whole point was that on the issues that are my major concerns, where the Republican parties are too right leaning for me, i.e., the like ban on abortion thing, they move left on that. And on the other issues where I think that like the left needs to be reined in a bit, like all the stuff that I said about like wokeism and all the stuff that I said about like open borders, like on the basis of like humanitarian issues, the Republican Party is trying to move us to the right of that, which I think is what's needed to help fix the issue, right? So the Republican Party, to me, is becoming more and more attractive because they're moving left on the correct issues and moving right on the correct issues as well. Versus where I think that the Democratic Party is just kind of moving left in general as a whole on like every single issue. And then on some issues, they've moved too far to the left. And that's become less appealing to me. And this is why like I went as far as endorsing Trump for this, because I think that that's like really what's needed. His like kind of more balanced approach, as crazy as that sounds when I say Trump is like more balanced, but it appears that the evidence is telling me that this is the case. Tristan, what do you have to say to that? I know you have some response.
I understand your argument. I don't know if I would necessarily agree on every aspect of it, but I'd have to think about it more to really nail down where I would agree and where I would disagree on that front, since there's I think in a lot of respects the Republican Party tends to still be fairly right on a lot of issues, and maybe the ones that are priority to you, they're moving in the right direction, but I think there are issues in other areas where there's still, even if they aren't moving right or left, they're still too far in the right camp for me for other areas. But I'd have to really nail it down on where and what those policies are before I go too hard on them. And I think the same thing can be said for the Democrats, where there's definitely some areas where they're spending a lot of time on things that I don't think are super important, and spending a lot of time and effort, and yet being negligent on other areas that I think are of importance. So it's difficult to say.
I've said in the past, and I actually still stand by this despite my endorsement of Trump, is that I don't believe that Trump is the best candidate that America has to offer, right? Like, obviously, you're never going to find a candidate that's 100% in agreement with you. And obviously, I don't agree with Trump on 100% of what he says. But I think if we were to go down this path of a two-party system, which you can argue against it and you can say how stupid it is all you want, but this is the system that is in place. And if you vote for anyone else, they're not going to win and your vote is not going to matter. Right? So between the two, I think that Trump has become acceptable enough for me to like support him. And Biden has moved so far to the left and implemented all these bad policies, in my opinion, that he's and also not to mention the cognitive decline, that he's basically unelectable. So this is the point, right? Like between Trump and Biden, like Biden is completely unacceptable and Trump is acceptable enough to consider. And this is the point that I'm trying to make, right? And if I could pick anyone to be president, I would not pick either Trump or Biden. And I think that that is a sentiment that is shared by most people, right? So yeah, last thing that I wanted to say to this is, again, I know that tonight has made me sound like a alt-right fringe conspiracy theorist, but let me just show you one final piece of data that might go against that, right? So this is a poll that is done by Jesse, who's goes by Micro to Macro. He's a YouTuber in the finance realm. So he ran this poll that got over 1,300 votes that so far, right? The vote is running for 6 days, but so far 1,300 people voted, and he basically asked, like, who would you vote for, right? Just plain and simple. Trump, Biden, RFK Jr., or don't care, or don't know. And look at the margins, right? Like 69% of people voted for Trump in this poll. And Biden actually came less than RFK, who's like, you know, a third party candidate who's like been kicked out of the Democratic Party, who's not polling that well overall. I mean, he's polling well for a third party candidate, but nowhere near enough to even stand a remote chance of winning. So, you know, the fact that Biden got less votes than RFK, and like look at the proportion of people who voted for Trump. So I want to push back against this idea that supporting Trump is this fringe idea that your like weird racist uncle is that only your weird racist uncle is supportive of. It's not, right? And this is exemplified by another comment with this random guy who commented on Jesse's poll that says, as a fourth generation New Yorker who voted against Trump twice, I will be voting for Trump in 2024 this time around, because the toxic byproduct of the woke DEI, defund the police, pro-Hamas garbage that I witnessed in my city has to change. The AG, or Attorney General, and the Manhattan DA have to go, and Trump will lean into this. So this is, again, one person's opinion. I don't live in New York, so I don't know enough about exactly what's going on to really comment on this. I don't think you guys have that much to comment on this either, but I'm trying to illustrate just one person's opinion, right? This is just, I'm sure this sentiment is shared by a lot of people. And New York is a very deep blue state, right? Like Democratic, supportive state. So that's kind of one final piece of news I wanted to share. And maybe just very one last point, because we're running way over time here. But Trump, the rumor is that Trump will announce that the U.S. will adopt a Bitcoin strategic reserve if he's elected. And Trump is scheduled to speak in Bitcoin Nashville, which is a annual Bitcoin conference that's happening next week. So the rumor is that he will make this announcement at Bitcoin Nashville. So in case you guys don't know what that means, is that, you know, how like MicroStrategy adopted a Bitcoin treasury strategy, right? And El Salvador adopted a Bitcoin treasury strategy as well. So the US wouldn't be the only country that would do this. And it's not like, you know, the US would put all their money into Bitcoin. It's just keep a bag of Bitcoin aside just for strategic national security purposes, right? Or at least that's the rumor. And this rumor came from Dennis Porter, who's one of the chief, like, I guess, lobbyists for Bitcoin in Washington, D.C. So, you know, I'm inclined to believe that if anyone would have political news related to Bitcoin, it would be Dennis Porter. In case you guys don't know who he is relatively famous, and he's been lobbying both Democrats and Republicans for, you know, to promote pro-Bitcoin policies for the past, you know, 5-6 years or however long it's been. So yeah, this is just a rumor. But what do you guys think about this rumor? Could this happen, and should America do this, and would this be a good thing? Just last story for tonight.
Well, this is gonna automatically sound super biased, but of course, like they should do this is like a no-brainer. Um, I think it's funny how the bottom says P.S. This is not a joke. My sources are credible, so that's like wonderful news for us, I guess. That'd be quite a good amount of news, like I just said. Anyway, so this Nashville event is next week, you said, I believe, or
Yes, and actually, I will be going to Bitcoin Nashville.
oh, really? Oh, sweet. Enjoy. Okay,
No
good, good.
episode next week, unless you guys want to do the episode by yourselves. But you guys are gonna have to put together the docket if that's the case, because I will be not.
Wait, so
if that's the case,
so you're
yeah.
gonna actually be able to see him like in person, maybe? Like,
Yeah.
he,
I
oh,
mean, apparently it costs like $60,000 per photo.
oh,
Trump, so I won't be able to afford that, unfortunately. So I won't be able to take a picture with him. But yeah, I'll probably be in the audience when he speaks. So
you should do
yeah.
like a Zillennial Money like live stream, like.
Yeah, I mean, how do you guys feel about running the show without me? It's up to you guys, or we can just skip next week. But yeah, that's what's happening next week, and I'm quite excited for it. I've never been to well, actually I've been to Nashville for like an overnight like thing once. I stayed like at a hotel, but I didn't get to tour the city. So be my first like real experience in Nashville.
Okay, good. Like, yeah, have fun and stuff. Yeah, that's like just like take photos and stuff. That's good. Yeah, but like I think this would on topic, this would look good for his political campaign too as well. I think the more people more than ever have like so much exposure to Bitcoin and like more knowledge on it, like more than like previous years. So I think adding this to his let's call it portfolio is gonna help him a ton. So yeah, enjoy. Wow, that sounds fun. Frick, I want to go to Nashville too.
Yeah, and just to bring it back on topic, like this is the kind of the another point that I wanted to make, like not to like hammer on this drum, but who's more likely to do this, right? Trump or Biden? Let's just say, right? Like even if this rumor is not true, let's just say this rumor is not true. The fact that Trump is willing to come to Bitcoin Nashville, do you think Biden will come to Bitcoin Nashville? Like he would not, right? And he would never do something like this where you can see something like this happening for Trump, right? Even if he's not going to announce it at Bitcoin Nashville, maybe if he gets reelected, he'll do it like a year later or sometime down the line. But yeah, let me pass it to Tristan. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good strat. I think adding some Bitcoin to the reserve is a good thing for America's security and for us in general. Anyone who's holding Bitcoin, I think that's a good factor. I definitely agree with you that Trump is much more likely to do anything with Bitcoin than Biden, because I think Biden is very Democrat on that side, where it's like all crypto is a scam, or at least he's enough on that side that he's not going to look into it at all. So yeah, I think that's pretty much covers it. And have fun in Nashville.
We'll do. Yeah, that's all I have for tonight. We're a little bit over time, so if you guys don't have anything else to add, why don't we wrap it up right there on that bombshell? And again, I guess you guys don't want to run the show next week, so it's up to you guys. But I think as of right now, we'll just skip next week because I don't feel like working while I'm on vacation. So yeah, anyways, let me pass it to Dom for the outro.
Alrighty, guys. Yeah, total fair play with Andy there. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast for today. So be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel as well as our Clips channel. Check out our personal channels too. They're pretty cool as well. And with that being said, bye. See you.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.